All right, people, we're wrapping up January. It's our end of the year top 10 list selection. We already did our top 10 worst of the year, some lists that were gaining a lot of traction on YouTube, and I wonder why, just given the year that 2021 was. But given that 2021 was also an incredible year for your favorite medium, Chris, the TV nerd, needless to say, we're on the top 10 best TV shows of 2021. You excited?
Yeah, I just want to say this list wasn't easy for me to make. Apparently, I watched 27 shows across 28 seasons because Cobra Kai gave us 2 seasons in 1 year. So there was a lot to consider here. A lot went into this list, guys, and I'm really excited for this morning's show.
Absolutely. All of that and more. Stay tuned. Chris, you know, these top 10 lists, specifically this video, always brings me back and reminds me of that hype that we were doing in, like, the summer of 2020, and you were being like, yeah, there's really no movie to watch because there wasn't, because it was 2020, and then you were like, yeah, it's been a great year for TV, and then, what's it called? And then I started reading off some of the shows that we had watched, and then you were like, oh, maybe it isn't such a great year for TV, and that just always brings a chuckle to my face. But the reason why I have to bring that up is because we are officially at a point, and I've been begrudging to admit it because obviously I'm the movie nerd, so naturally I'm always going to root for the big screen experience. But it's official. TV has surpassed movies. Like, it's so much more interesting, the stories that they're telling. It's so like it's just so much more engaging. I get such a thrill, such a rush of, especially since streaming has kind of brought back that week to week feeling overall that we used to get from TV all the time before Netflix came and wrecked that model for a little bit. It's kind of interesting because I feel like Netflix has almost kind of shot themselves in the foot with that model now, where we get things like Arcane, where, if anything, the only reason I feel like why people talked about Arcane was because they split it up across like 3 different weeks with their acts, you know, but Ozark came. I feel like Ozark came and went. I don't know who's talking about it, but meanwhile, those shows that came week to week and were dropping it, like Disney Plus took that model and ran with it, and now it feels like every other streaming service is doing that. So, I don't know. What's your take on that before we get into these lists?
No, it's crazy to think that we lost the week to week for a little while, because now it feels like we're so much so back in like the era that you and I both grew up in, like waiting week to week to see your favorite shows, you know? It is weird to see how, like, even though streaming, I believe, isn't a trend that's just going to be here today, gone tomorrow, it is weird to now be able to be so far in the streaming era that we can notice like trends coming and going, you know, like who would have thought that would have happened. But as far as like my overall take, I think what always made this show really cool was, like, I went to film school being a guy who wanted to restart in the creative arts, like on the television side of things. You went to film school coming from, you know, the more cinema, like sitting in a theater for 2 hours, getting like an immersive experience that way, whereas mine came on the small screen. I always enjoyed the way we brought both of those mediums that are so close together but also different at the same time to this conversation that we have here on Talking TV. So it's like, it's strange to see that like they both can't be in tandem thriving at the same time, because I think that'd be awesome for both you and I. But at least we have one that's good, because let's be honest, there's been a lot of bad in these past few years.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You know?
And I've been begrudging to admit it, especially given that like movies were already sucking before the pandemic, and then the pandemic just made it so much worse. But yeah, I'll still always remember, because for me, TV for the longest time was just watching kiddie cartoons on Friday night, Saturday mornings with my brothers. You know, again, the late 2000s block on Cartoon Network, you know, Clone Wars, Ben 10, all those. That was TV for me for the longest time, and because like that's why I didn't like watch TV. And then around high school, that's when I discovered the greatness that was HBO, because that's when Game of Thrones, you know, those early couple seasons were on, and that's when I really started to get into it and started to really like actually understand, oh, okay, this is what TV can be, this is what like it's actually capable of on a cinematic stage. And now with the combination of streaming and all these different auteurs that have gone to TV over the last couple of years, it's officially become the place for like actually like cinematic stories, which is kind of crazy, because again, it's to the detriment of like every single film bro or film director that it's like, you got to see these movies in the theaters, you got to see these movies in the theaters. And yeah, this is kind of, and now I find it ironic that I have the poster of The Godfather, the greatest movie of all time, that's turning 50 this year, behind me, and we're getting a TV show this year called The Offer, which is based on the making of The Godfather, which is famously one of the most troubled productions in Hollywood history. I feel like that like is the perfect tie-up to my point that TV has officially surpassed media in terms of storytelling, because 5 or 6 years ago, we would have gotten that as a movie, not a TV show.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's crazy. You know what I think it is? I think it's that these streaming services did such a good job of offering the world to these auteur directors and these creators who kind of had to deal with the studio system and were at first hesitant of probably going over to streaming. I'm just speculating here, but they were probably hesitant at first to go work with the likes of a Netflix or maybe like Amazon being another one of those early competitors into the streaming wars. I mean, we've had Prime Video now for at least 6 years, and so with originals, I mean, and so they did such a good job of, like, I think giving creative control back in a way that was both beneficial to them as a company and to the creator feeling fulfilled, because as much as people love to talk and say, oh yeah, people get into Hollywood for the money, I mean, a lot of people try to make it and never do. It's because we are passionate at the end of this day. There's a reason why we watched, I watched the most amount of TV in the year that I ever have in my most busiest year of life, 27 seasons, 27 shows, 28 seasons. It's because we love it. So it's not just for the money. It's not just to secure the bag, as the kids are now calling it online. It's because we are passionate about it, and I can assume it becomes very disheartening when you're like a top tier creator and you come in with this amazing script, but then the studio's like, okay, yeah, but there's no joke at minute 34, and we didn't introduce all the 90 other Batmans, so you're gonna have to rewrite this thing. And it's like, I just want to tell a good story. You know what I mean? And it's like streaming, I feel like, has given these creators an outlet to do that. So I think that's another reason why we see this renaissance that you speak of.
And what's interesting about that, too, is I'm pretty sure you might have me beat as far as amount of TV shows. Like, I watch, you know me, I literally do nothing but watch stuff, so, because I have no life. But outside of this podcast,
look, we appreciate it,
I think you may have me beat, though, this year as far as that goes. I'm looking at all these shows that I have outside of my top 10 and outside of my honorable mentions, and, like, outside of, like, a few, there really aren't that many, because this was also famously the other thing that we have to talk about with TV this year. This is also famously the year that we got the MCU now infecting our TV sphere. In addition to our movies, we dealt with it for 11 years on the big screen, and now we have it on the small screen. And we got like 5 Disney Plus shows that were all like 5 of like the most talked about shows when they were on. I feel like, with the
speaking of The Godfather, right? Just when I thought I was out,
they pull you back in. You know what's crazy about that, too? That quote is like one of the most quoted phrases from The Godfather. Yeah. And that's not from any of the quote-unquote good ones. That's a quote from 3. 3, the most maligned Godfather movie, and that quote is the one that's quoted over and over and over. Of course it's Pacino. Of course it's Pacino. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. And that's the one that Silvio does all the time from The Sopranos. It's fucking hilarious, and like everybody like hates 3, and I'm like, nah, maybe you don't hate it as much as you do. But tune in. Put it this way: tune in later for the channel for like any potential further Godfather talks. But it is the greatest movie of all time. But Chris, you ready to get into these lists?
I am. But before we do that, we would, of course, as normally, love to ask you guys if you enjoy being a part of this community, and it seems you do because we're already growing in subscribers just this past week alone. Let's keep that train rolling. Hit the subscribe button, guys. Give this video a like. Turn that bell on so you get notified every time we talk about an obscure TV show that the big mainstream paid-off film critics are too afraid to talk about. That's about it. Let's get into this, Dom. How do you want to start this off, man? I know last time I did the segue, so I threw it on you. So if you don't want to go first, I can go first this time. It's totally up to you.
I would say let's trade it off. Look, you're the TV nerd. This is your bag. You started off. What's your number 10?
All right. So controversial, I believe it will be, and what's that saying? Ad propos to like my normal stance here on the podcast.
Quid pro quo. I don't really know. There's too many different Latin phrases for me to remember.
All I know is that as I was making my list, sifting through TV shows, watching some shows get bumped, sadly for others, very sadly, we'll save those for honorable mentions, I had to go with Hawkeye at number 10.
Wow. Crazy. That's crazy.
I know. And you guys are probably like, damn, Chris,
I don't even
with
think
the
this made
MCU.
honorable mentions for me.
Really? Okay, so here's the reason why. For me, I think this show was always destined to fail. I love a good underdog story, right? I'm currently watching the NFL playoffs, and I'm like, I want the teams to win because I like the stars on the big teams, but like, I kind of find myself inside, if I really ask myself who I want to win, it seems to be the underdogs. And I think Hawkeye is exactly that. But also, it was the perfect amount of blockbuster cheese, corny filmmaking that I wanted. It was the perfect amount of Christmas season. I think that when they dropped this, it was the right timing. I think like because the conversation wasn't so grandiose around it, it also made me realize, yeah, you used to read Marvel too, you know? It's just that there wasn't everyone and their mother poking at this thing, dissecting it, ripping it to shreds, trying to find every little freeze frame Easter egg moment. You could just enjoy this one. And it kind of made me realize, like, I can enjoy the MCU. It's hard being a part of this generation, this world we live in, to enjoy it sometimes. On top of Jeremy Renner just being so spectacular, and I love the introduction of all the new characters. I love that we got to sort of see the world expand on like the small screen. I love the whole like Marvel Netflix verse seeping in. And to be honest with you, like this was a charming little show. So I know there will be shows in my honorable mention that you guys are going to be like, what? How did this beat that? And I understand some of those shows, the filmmaking is better. Yes, I know. But I thought this was fun. And this is my list. It's not the perfect list. It's my list. So yeah, Hawkeye's number 10. What about you, Dom?
All right, so my number 10, again, don't hate me for having too many popularist shows, because again, I do like to think that my list is pretty popularist, but I've got a few underdogs that I snuck in there. But my number 10 is Invincible, and I like it's kind of interesting. I can't really call this one the little show that could, because it's on Amazon, even though it is animated. And Amazon, they only put out like really 3 shows a year that people will actually watch, but then they end up turning out to be like the most watched things in the moment. And this one, the reason why this ended up making the list amongst a lot of other choices that I could have had, because trust me, I was very, very close to potentially switching this out for Cobra Kai, which is that the show kind of snuck up on me and pulled a trick on me, which is that I saw it was an animated superhero show, and I'm like, okay, cool, this is like a little bit of like a coming of age story, and I watched the first 3 episodes, and I'm like, this is cute. I don't necessarily know if these need to be like 40 minutes to an hour long. I feel like they could get away with half an hour long, and then they started changing up the length of each episode as they went on. And then as each episode kept going on, it started sucking me in more and more and more as the stakes got... It did what like no other superhero property does now, which is that it actually like increased the stakes with each passing episode. And the fact that they pulled off that kind of a story, that kind of like an intense, pressurized like superhero coming of age story, like the midpoint of this season is literally like all of these young heroes getting the shit kicked out of them in like a really, really bloody fashion, and it actually was like really impactful, and it really hit me, and I'm like, okay. And then with the way that it ended, obviously with the infamous memed twist of the think Mark think moment, you know, it actually kind of struck me as far as I'm like, oh, okay, so this is what superheroes can be, you know, because again, we always get those one-offs that actually show us, I'm like, okay, this is what superhero storytelling really is, you know, Watchmen in 2019, The Boys seasons 1 and 2, The Suicide Squad earlier this year, which you guys may or may not see in, you know, some best of the year movie lists that we have coming out next week. But this is honestly one of them that I can safely say has earned it. It's one of the few superhero properties that actually earned its spot. It was vicious, it was bloody, it was violent, it actually had some interesting, every character was interesting though, it had some really twisted and interesting moments, and it was ultimately able to actually create its own interesting comic mythos that, even though it was based on Robert Kirkman's source material, still felt fresh and new enough and independent enough outside of Marvel and DC for it to be really interesting. So that's my number 10, Invincible.
Okay. Wow, I had to take that one in for a second. That was really good points raised. I almost feel like you raised points good enough to make this thing a little higher on the list, so I'm curious to see where you go.
All right. Well, I mean, what's your number 9?
Yeah, speaking of things I wish I could have made some arguments to raise a little higher on the list, this was one of those shows that I referenced at the beginning that as I was fleshing this list out, it just kind of kept falling. Although I knew this show would always have a spot on this list, because I think with the first season, a debut season, there's always room to grow, so if it can capture you and encapsulate me the way that this show did, then it's always off to a good track, and of course, being on Apple TV Plus helps a lot. Guys, I'm talking about Physical.
Let's go.
This show's really cool. This show is what I think we are missing. We are missing from the TV sphere, even if we are in this golden age. It has that classic sort of, not auteur style, but that classic sort of style of quicker, half-hour-ish storytelling episodes. It's not quite a comedy, it's not quite a drama, but it's also a little bit of both of those. It has some action, but it's just like one of those cool, quirky little stories that I feel like we used to see in like the early 2000s that I don't know what happened to them. I think network TV started to get scared of streaming, and so it was try to find the next big sitcom, try to find the next Big Bang Theory to bring down this Netflix beast, and this type of TV kind of got lost in the way. I feel like it was refreshing for that reason, and also it was a really cool sort of time era to explore. I know everyone's doing this like sort of like retro throwback thing now, right? We see a lot in the 80s. Everything's all neon-y and pink if it's anything sci-fi. This was like a different side of the past that we got to explore, kind of like a low-key beachside area of, I believe it was, San Diego? And
yeah, San Diego, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and it's like it expertly managed the politics of the time. It also kind of like didn't take itself too seriously, even in the moments it was intense. It was just really fun. Rose Byron, it was absolutely awesome. And to be honest with you, I know everyone made a big deal out of her. I'm not going to lie, I hadn't really heard of her until this. So this was like, what was she in prior to this that I would have known her from?
Unfortunately, the X-Men prequels.
Right, and exactly why I didn't know her. And so I from my first exposure to her, I think she's great. I think she can carry a show. The show's not perfect. I think the back half of the season did start to meander a little bit. I think Apple ordered 10 episodes. It seemed like they only had like 7 or 8. But that's okay, because even its slowest moments were a lot of fun. Looking at you, morning show, where they weren't.
Yeah.
And what I will say is, Dom, I know you probably don't watch much commercial television, right?
I don't. So, I've been strictly anti-commercial for a long time now.
And I love that, so am I. I only really watch it during football. Even Apple's, they have this commercial right now. You got to go look it up. It's John Hamm. And he's like calling Tom Hanks, like saying, Tom, I'm watching Apple TV Plus. I saw you have another movie, not just Finch. Okay.
Yeah, Tom Hanks got a lot of Apple movies.
And he's like, I would love to get in there. And he's like calling Mahershala Ali. And he's like, there's 2 of you in one show. He's like, you couldn't have cast me. He's like, I'm happy for you, man. But like, I would love to get in there. And it's like, he's like trying to get on Apple. Like everyone's on Apple TV Plus is what he's saying. He's trying to get on. But even that commercial is like shot so well, where I think it just speaks to the streaming service, where there's like these amazing crane shots and the panning is so, and there's a level of quality on Apple TV Plus that I think you guys are going to see more than just one Apple TV Plus show on my list. It's they span all different genres. They're phenomenal, and that's why this show's here, even with the problems in season 1, because it's in good hands, man. We don't have to worry about it getting canceled. We know this show's going to be given the legs and room to grow, and god damn it, do I love these characters, and I can't wait to see them grow. So I don't know if you are factoring the strength of the service, the streaming service of these shows into your list, but like ever
100%.
since I got burned by Glow, I feel like I have to. So yeah, number 9,
Dude.
Physical.
Dude, stop ripping my points out of my brain. This is getting annoying because my number 9 is also Physical.
Hey.
You literally just took everything that I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, for more reasons than one that you just said. Yeah, this filled the hole that Netflix ultimately left in our hearts when they ripped Glow away from us. This show is just impeccable. Again, like 5-6 years ago, I don't even know if they would have actually like had the balls that I'm going to say to actually make this into a movie, because this movie, I mean, dare I say it, this show is just, it's so visceral, it's so raw, it's so of its own like nature. I love the creative force that goes behind it. Rose Byrne, the thing that I'll kind of add to pretty much everything that you said about this show, besides the fact that Apple TV really came to play this year after that, if anything, I feel like that's almost what made the second season of The Morning Show so disappointing, was the fact that all their other shows were so good, and then The Morning Show season 2 sucked so hard. This show is just so of its own nature and just has such an uncaring, unforgiving nature about its audience and about who's watching it and whether they want people to like its characters, because if anything, like kind of that like not giving any fucks nature is kind of what made some of the best shows ever before, some of the best shows ever. Vince Gilligan, David Chase have always talked about the fact that there was always like that interesting antithesis that they had with the audience, and that's kind of what made the quality of their show so good. And I honestly think that this show is one of them that can actually follow it up. Rose Byrne is an absolute force to be reckoned with, and I'd also make an argument to say, arguably of all the debut shows, I don't necessarily know if it's the best debut show of the year, but it might be the best debut pilot of the year. Craig Gillespie shoots the hell out of it. Again, it just showed to me, I believe it was the first real demonstration, because For All Mankind was a second season, right? But this was the first real demonstration for me after the year of the pandemic that showed, wow, okay, the Apple has really, really got legs. And I absolutely love this show, 110%. And yeah, I'm really mad because you pretty much took away everything that you pretty much said. Everything that I was going to say.
Dude,
Physical,
my bad.
Physical. It's awesome. It's awesome. My number 9.
Yeah, dude. That was a great point. It definitely might be the best pilot of the year. I hadn't even thought about that, but I was instantly hooked. Yeah. And
yeah. For sure.
All
Also,
right, well,
great debut performances as well. Besides Rose Byrne, like Lou Taylor Pucci as the dumb surfer boyfriend, Rory Scandal as the shitbird husband, Jeffrey Arend, who's one of it's all these character actors you've seen in 1.5 million things, but you'll never know their names. They pop in and they all give incredible performance. I particularly loved the actress who played her housewife friend, who like kind of like gained more of her own confidence throughout the show. Just all these different little subplots that they all just managed to make work. Like they had such a strong grasp of their characters. It was amazing. I loved it.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Speaking of a strong grasp of their characters, this show recovered, I think, from a very rocky second season to give us 2 amazing seasons in 1 year. But I'm just going to say that season 4 of Cobra Kai is the one that's going to make this list. Season 3 would have, if we hadn't gotten 2 seasons of a show in 1 year.
But we also know that season 3 was really the setup for season 4. And also because they already had season 3 shot and ready to go by the time that YouTube Premium canceled them and then Netflix bought them.
Right, but let me just say it again in case you guys missed that. We got 2 seasons of a single show in 1 year. That is insane. That is the Cobra Kai way. They struck first, they struck hard, and they showed no mercy. They dropped so much goddamn content on us. It was unreal. Like, I have to just, like, as a fan of the medium, knowing how much it takes to put into this, like, I get it. The third season was already shot, but the speed, the quickness of which they finished that 4th season while still having it be such a high
You could almost
quality,
say it's a speed of an eagle, would you say?
Yes, I think I think you could say. And by the way, Eagle Fang, so stupid. I love it. This show,
incredible. How dare you, sir? That is incredible.
This show could have turned into something bad. It clearly came out of the gate strong, garnered a huge internet following. It was an internet phenomenon, honestly, and it could have easily crashed and burned, but I think we're soaring higher than ever. I don't know what I can say that I already haven't said about this show, except for the fact that this was one that I never questioned once it entered my list, leaving it. So yeah, Cobra Kai season 4 at number 8.
Yeah, Cobra Kai was a lot of fun. I binged the first season, the third season, I should say. It took me like 2 days to binge. This last season, I binged it all in 1 day. It was amazing. Speaking of, returns for... Speaking of like comebacks for shows specifically from universes that we feel like have been failing us recently, I feel like, with Book of Boba Fett consistently like just disappointing us seemingly week after week, I think it's fitting that, again, the best medium of Star Wars storytelling came to play in 2021, that being Star Wars The Bad Batch, taking everything that was great about that final season of Clone Wars that we got in 2020 that was just so special and so magical and just wrapped up everything that I loved about Star Wars as a kid, and they took the reject characters that were only there to like have like what do they call those things? As a backdoor pilot for this one, took them, gave them their own show, and arguably made it like one of the best like action shows, war shows, comedic shows. Like they essentially brought back the A-Team in animated format and in a strange way made us like really nostalgic and sad for the first bad era of Star Wars, that being the prequels. Like, what is happening? Like, each of these characters are types, each of these characters are tropes that we've seen it 1,000,000 times before, and they still somehow, again, Filoni and his animating team just do exactly what it is that they did with 7 seasons of the Clone Wars and make them so endearing, they make them so lovable. All the references to the greater Star Wars universe are there. The show actually has like a lot of stakes as they go on. Like the action in this, forget the fact that it's animated, the action in this is next level as far as what they're able to accomplish on a story from a storytelling standpoint. This was that like summer show that I feel like not everybody was talking about week to week because again, it's animated and it's always got that bad rap, but me and my friends were each talking about that week to week and how awesome it was, and it really made me remember. I'm like, okay, this is why, because it had been a couple of months since Mandalorian season 2, so we still have like a little bit of that good taste in our mouth from that season. But I was still like, yes, this is what makes Star Wars special. This is why Star Wars belongs on TV. This is what brings like kind of the cinematic feeling of Star Wars to TV, and it just makes Book of Boba Fett that we have now even more disappointing because this show is friggin' amazing. Anybody that says that this is like a bad spinoff because it's animated or it's too much like the A-Team, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I'm just saying that right now. This was amazing, and if not for the first 7 entries, it would be higher. Star Wars: The Bad Batch.
Yeah, great points all around. Great show. I had a lot of fun with that one. And another show I had a lot of fun with was an HBO Max original. Coming in at number 7 is Hacks, starring Gene Smart and Hannah Einbender. And I haven't heard of Hannah Einbender before, but she plays Ava, and she's absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, we all know Gene Smart. She's been around TV and film forever. Never really as like a megastar, but certainly an actress who has chops and who can bring it when asked to, and I think in this role she really shines. I mean, their chemistry is so amazing. It's so endearing. It's such a cool little story. It's a great commentary on cancel culture, almost so much so that I think it's so smart that the suits at HBO Max, who obviously help promulgate cancel culture, didn't realize that they were like talking about themselves by greenlighting this show. I mean, for this show to get off the air, it just shows how dumb Hollywood really is, because they're not like saying it from a left perspective or a right perspective. They're talking about cancel culture from a neutral standpoint. They're talking about the good and the bad. And normally they don't like that type of stuff to get out. So I was very shocked that happened. It kind of blew my mind, to be honest with you. And as the show kept going on, they kept making more jabs and more jokes. There was even a point where they talk about Jeffrey Epstein in a way that it's like, is Ricky Gervais here at the Golden Globes helping them write this episode? Like, I had to look it up to see, like, I know he's your friend, but I don't care, you know? Like, it's like, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it, but it felt so refreshing. Outside of the fact that, you know, because of how Hollywood loves to beat their politics down my throat, I felt I had to talk about that. Normally I wouldn't. I would just talk about how amazing of a show this is, and it is. And you can talk about the narrative, sort of seeing like a failing comedian at this point in her life, trying to revitalize her career. It was an interesting perspective. Again, like, it's a story that it's been told before, but I like the way they were telling it. It was really cool to sort of see like the rising from the ashes story and the way that they did it with the old generation meets the young generation, especially when you like think about just in culture how different those two generations truly are. The fact that they were able to find common ground, I don't know, it's kind of like the show we need at this time in history. It was really cool, and of course just being like excellent in making you laugh the entirety of its run. Even when it was sad, you were like, fuck, that's still funny though. Like, I kind of still want to laugh there. Like, I know I shouldn't, but also you should, because they want you to have that, like, you're laughing right now because as a human, sometimes like other people's suffering can be funny, and I'm going to make you realize that you're not perfect, so stop thinking you are. The amount of intelligent conversations that this silly little show raises is far too many for it not to make my list. So yeah, Hacks at number 7.
Yeah, again, not going to be another too much of a shift, because my number 7 is Hacks. Look, this was a show that I heard a lot of good things about, and then I watched the pilot and I instantly fell in love. Like, I also love, too, again, all the millennial jokes that they made about Ava, rather, in the show. Again, it's another one of those things where the actors' personalities are kind of interchangeable with the characters that they play, but normally that's a weakness for me, but in this sense, it is not. And then she kind of had to consistently remind them, it's like, yeah, I'm too young to be a millennial. I'm only 26. I'm Gen Z. So she's like, their millennials are 40. And that was just kind of a crazy thing where it's like, wow, so we have a baby boomer with a Gen Zer here. And that, for me, was like kind of the consistent through line throughout the show as far as what made me love it, just kind of the differences between those two generations and how they were able to kind of find common ground to make the show to a point where I really felt like I wasn't even watching a comedy at this point. I feel like, if anything, that's what I've loved about comedic storytelling across both movies and TV recently, is the fact that they're really actually not trying to just aim for the joke and aim for the punchline. They're actually trying to aim for like what the meat of the story is. What are these characters trying to get at, with their kind of crossing over? And normally this is the type of structure, where a young, like, kind of up and coming person is teamed up with an older legendary celebrity. We've seen that done rather poorly, I would say, in previous instances, and this is one of the ones that absolutely got that right, that nailed the dynamic. I absolutely love the back and forth between Gene Smart and Hannah Einbinder. The jokes when they hit were really funny, but the jokes, it almost felt like were like a gateway to like the character's own inner psyche and damages. Kind of how they were able to bond over their respective traumas. The one who is worried that she got canceled before she even had a shot to really make it. The other one who feels like she's had this entire legacy, and what is it amounting to? There were some really funny bits, but that to me is what kind of made the show really, really special. Ended in probably one of my favorite finales of the year, when she's kind of comforting her at her dad's funeral, and how they kind of made that come out of nowhere, and also how they were able to pull the show off just given the COVID restrictions. Like, there are certain actors like the gay butler, Carl Clemens Hopkins, he literally didn't even meet Gene Smart until their first day of shooting. And the fact that they had like that much chemistry and synergy across that, just given the measures of the COVID shoot. And the fact that this was conceived by the three creators, the one who plays, her dumb agent, those were the parts with the dumb agent and his assistant. Those were the storylines that didn't necessarily work super well for me. But how they managed to, how the creators of the show came up with this while they were just on a road trip. And that's kind of how they conceived this idea. I love it. It's. I would say that, again, there are a couple more entries on this list, but I would say as far as starting seasons for shows, I would say live action wise, this is probably my favorite debut of the year. So yeah, my number 7, Hacks.
Yeah, well said. So This next show, somehow Netflix always manages to win the year. You know, in 2020 it was Tiger King. In 2021 it was Squid Game.
Yep.
And this show wasn't going to make my list, but then I thought about the cultural impact. And then I thought about how I kept thinking about it. You know, like I even remember watching like that Mr. Beast creates Squid Game in real life video and like being like so excited that came out.
Netflix always has that dumb trend per year. It's all the way back with the stupid Bird Box trend from 2018.
Right, they always somehow win the year. Whether or not it holds up, time will tell. But apparently they're greenlighting a Squid Game universe, and I gotta say, like, I'm kind of all for it. Like, I did go back and rewatch like the pilot and the second episode just to like try and justify, all right, can this make my list? And the filmmaking's there. I mean, it's a refreshing perspective. It's South Korean cinema, something you don't get to see that much of, really, because we don't really prop it up the way that we claim we would like to. But it's really good. And I mean, the performances, the acting, the show does fire on all cylinders. And I remember watching this thing for the first time being like, I got to take a break right now because either I'm over caffeinated or this show's really getting to me, because like I'm on the edge of my seat, my heart's racing really fast, but I couldn't stop. Like I just kept going. Like I think this was my quickest binge of a show throughout the course of the year. I think I watched this show across 3 nights, like in the middle of like the semester, just like having to get it done, because not only did I want to join the conversation, but because it was like a conversation for once that I wanted to join, like because it was actually somewhat, no, you know what? It actually was great filmmaking. Like it wasn't just some stupid Tiger King documentary or some like, you know, we're just going to like try and shock the zeitgeist for a quick moment with a Bird Box. There was a lot there to like latch on to, a really cool concept, like especially like with the way that they talk about economics and how we view money and how much it matters to us and how much it will put us through and what it will get us to go through. It asks like a lot of actual serious questions. Now, my only fear is I hope that as time goes on, since they are making a whole universe, I hope it doesn't dilute this first season, because it was really good. I think it's meant to be a miniseries, a standalone, but what do I know? All I know is that it's my number 6, pleasantly surprised, and Netflix, somehow you break the internet every year. How? I don't know.
I'm convinced that they just have the Alexander Skarsgård code from Succession that was introduced this past season. I'm convinced that that's what it is, because my number 6 is also Squid Game. What is that, like 3 entries that we've had in common now? I swear to God. I swear to God. This is weird. Awesome. This just shows how in sync our brains are. That's weird. Look, this show was one that, and I've said that there's always that show every year that, again, has the hype factor into it. And every year I've ignored it. I'm like, look, I'm not buying into a show just because of its hype factor. I've been burned so many different times by so many different movies that do not hold up with it. And I finally checked it out with my friends, and I think it was the Marbles episode. Episode 6 was the first one, because my friends it was like in the midst of like the craze, and I started watching it, and I was like, what is this show? This is interesting. I've said it before. I'm not an anime guy. I watch a lot of Studio Ghibli. I like other types of animation. I am not an anime guy traditionally, even though all my friends are really super heavily into that. And this show does pull elements from that, but I think kind of like how it like pulls like kind of that old school like battle royale-esque feeling that like we were kind of that was like starting to break through in the early 2000s with like Old Boy and stuff before that went away for a bit. And now ever since Parasite kind of respawned this kind of like love for South Korean cinema, I think it was the perfect time for this to come out. And it fits too, because I mean the story behind this, again, it's this creator had conceived of this entire thing himself in 2009, and 10 years later, Netflix picks it up for more of its international programming, and this dude wrote and directed this entire thing by himself. That's just giving me a headache just in general, thinking about like managing that entire thing and having just such this clear-cut vision from start to finish. It's what we've been talking about since Minute One that movies just seem to have forgotten about. It has the story. Forget the politics of it all. It's just a really, really interesting and compelling story that gets you into the minds of each and every one of its different characters and what each of their motivations are. I think one of the best episodes for me is the second episode, when they all leave the game after the first one. They go back to their lives, and then they realize, oh man, even though we just witnessed all these people die, we could lose our lives. The risk is worth it, because what do we have outside here? I think just like I feel like more so than the economic standpoint, just I think the sociological standpoint, I think that's the aspect that people never talk about when it comes to these types of struggles, as far as like, it's much more so than just having the money. It's what you do and kind of the type of class and the type of person person that it makes you when you have the money. And I think that also stands when they bring in, kind of like, the rich elite in order to like view the one game near the end. I think that speaks, waves as well. I was really, really impressed by what the show was able to accomplish. It's not my favorite show of the year, but it was still really, it just, again, for it having the wave and the moment that it did. Like, this is a South Korean show that people in the Midwest were watching. That is insane when you think about it. So that's my number 6, Squid Game.
Yeah, man. Damn, that was well said. And hats off to them. That was a crazy moment in culture. Before we start the back half of this list, guys, we would love to ask you one last time to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video, and turn that little bell on after you subscribe and hit the like button so you can miss when we, or so you never miss when we, talk about shows you probably never heard of because, again, your favorite film critics aren't paid or they're too scared to talk about something off the beaten path, or when we offer new perspectives to shows like Squid Games that you probably haven't heard of. Because I don't know anyone who talked about Squid Game like we did. I'm not tooting our own horn. I'm just saying, like, think, people, think. And speaking of thinking, this next show, number 5, is a show that makes me think back to why I love Star Wars so much. Bad Batch comes in at number 5 because if there's one thing that Star Wars is doing right, it's just letting Filoni do whatever the hell he wants when he goes into like whatever computer-generated program that they're using to cook these amazing-looking characters up in.
I'm telling you, man, animation, that's the future of Star Wars. I'm telling you.
Look, I'll take what I can get at this point. Of course, I'd love it to be live action, but thank God we have some good Star Wars. I disagree with what you said in regards to hearkening back to the first worst era of Star Wars. The prequels are incredible movies, but at the end of the day, one thing that we both agree on is people are nostalgic for those movies now, and I think it's the success of the Filoniverse. And I remember when these characters were introduced in the final season of the Clone Wars last year, and we were thinking to ourselves, this is the people they're making the show for? How? Like, they were just such a small part of the arc. But it just shows Filoni just is such a master of storytelling that he can take the most insignificant characters, and I'm not calling the Bad Batch insignificant, but I'm just saying he has the ability to take the most insignificant characters, create a 16-episode season about these characters, and make almost every episode compelling and fulfilling. And that's incredible to do. He has such a grasp on the Star Wars universe. He is the one doing George Lucas the biggest respect every time he steps into the creative helm. It's awesome to see. I mean, look, whether or not we like it, we're going to get more Star Wars. It is owned by Disney now. Brace yourself for impact, guys. There will be an onslaught of Star Wars to come. So hopefully it can all be as good as this, because this show was phenomenal. It's a kid's show, yet we were having conversations on our weekly recap that were far above what you could talk about for any other kid's show. And I think that alone speaks to why Bad Batch is my number 5. I cannot wait for more.
And just brace yourself, because in addition to Bad Batch Season 2, we're getting Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, and Mandalorian Season 3. Woo woo. Oh, so exciting right there. My number 5 is the show that ultimately proved that, okay, thank God there is going to be TV outside of WandaVision, because with WandaVision just dominating the first 2 months and then it transitioning right into Falcon and Winter Soldier, I was worried, to say the least, about TV. And then this show came out. It was a sequel to a show that we actually covered the first season of the show. It was, I think, like our 5th or 6th podcast of the year, and it instantly blew me away as far as what it accomplished, and it really showed me, so this is what Apple TV is capable of, and that's For All Mankind. Season 2, again, it's another one of those sophomore seasons that takes everything that the first season did and just elevates it to new heights. Like, the acting was, I think, better all around. I think the characters were more fleshed out. Again, they weren't quite types in the first season, but the first season was really like establishing like the different world and the new mythos that we were in, this kind of alternative reality where Russia beats us to the moon. And this season, we really saw more of the ripple effects as we had jumped forward in time about a decade. We saw characters in new spots in their lives. It's very difficult when a show could pull that off. I usually am against when shows do that, and this show did that amazingly well. I thought the budget was somehow upped. I love the characters. Again, how they pulled off that ending by killing off 2 of the biggest characters with Gordo and Tracy, finally kind of getting them back together and then having them save the day. How they were able to really get into U.S. and Russian relations and everything. Again, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I really don't know what else I can say about this show that really kind of does it justice, because again, people just need to watch this show. It is so effing good. It really is one of the best shows ever. This show is so good good that Chris Ryan of The Watch even had it on his top 10 of the year, and I almost jumped for joy in my car. I was so happy. This really is one of the best shows on the air right now. It is doing what most sci-fi storytelling is not doing, and it just shows when it comes to unlimited resources, because again, they make $1 billion in one day just based off their AirPod sales. If this is what we get because of it, do more, Apple. That's all I gotta say. Do more. Less morning show, more of this kind of stuff, because this was incredible this season.
I keep hearing Ricky Gervais in the back of my head throughout the course of this episode. Oh, man. I won't dare quote it, but I just keep hearing that Golden Globe speech. But yeah, I mean...
it's the best. It's the best.
Yep.
2 years later, we're still thinking about it.
Yeah, I know. And that really should be like the ultimate top 10 of all the performances. But
yeah,
that was on TV, in my opinion. But another great show, man. Look, I love that we have some shows at the same spots, because we are very in sync that way. I didn't know your list going into this.
We really are. This is crazy.
But this show is...
because you know what always happened is I would always try to guess your entries, and then I would be so off about all of them, so I finally just stopped, and now we have them on here, and now it's like it's all in the same spot.
I haven't looked at yours, though. I'm just going in cold. I'm surprised every time you click yours on after me. It's fun for me that way. But what I will say is, at number 4 is a show you also had, but I put it a little higher. And here's why. Invincible.
Interesting.
Robert Kirkman's Invincible. I'm a huge fan of Robert Kirkman, and I'm not really that big of a Walking Dead fan. I love his run of Outlast. I think it's phenomenal. I actually have read a little bit of Invincible now after watching the show. Really good. It definitely, they did an amazing job adapting this show. It's very true to what was on the page. But it's... the choices they made, I will say, if you go back and read them, I think benefit the screen. And I love when a show can do that. You know, I love when a show or like a TV or a movie can understand what needs to make it and what doesn't need to make it. You know, reading the comic and then watching the show is really what kind of helped me bump this up a few spots. It was always on the list. This was another one that was always on the list, a little lower. The art of adaptation, I think, is an art form that gets kind of like shafted in the sense that people think, oh, it can't be that hard. You're just taking something that was already written and there's a lot more to it. And I think when something as successful as this, because I think this kind of broke the internet, and then Squid Game came along and said, oh, you're going to forget about everything else. It's Squid Game basically went and said, these are not the droids you're looking for, right? Speaking about Obi-Wan, like they just completely wiped everything that was successful from our memory. But dude, this show had like a run of like 6 weeks where it was like the end all be all. And that's probably because they released it week to week. I didn't watch it week to week. I watched it all at once at the end, which was an amazing binge because I couldn't believe it at first. Like everyone kept talking to me. How have you not watched this yet? How have you not watched this yet? And I'm like, I don't know, like American animation isn't my thing. I find the style very off-putting. I hate the way Family Guy looks. I hate the way American Dad looks. I hate the way all those shows look. And this show kind of looks like that. But the writing is so infectious that it doesn't matter. You know, I'm not a fan of the visualized style of Rick and Morty, but that's another show where it's like the writing is so good that the few times I do have to watch it when I'm at a friend's and they want to put it on, it's fine. It could be worse. We could be watching something way worse. And this is another one of those shows where it's like, don't let looks deceive you because there is so much here. There is so much, like the storytelling is phenomenal. The journeys... look, just go and watch it. I don't want to like spoil anything, but like what our character has to go through, our lead character has to go through at the end, involving his two parents, people that he loves, and seeing what happens to them is so heartbreaking and so sad. I mean, it's like such a high-brow journey that Kirkman and his team takes us on top of it being probably the most gory and gruesome superhero property ever, but so warranted. Like nothing ever felt like it was gore for the sake of gore. It didn't feel like a Rob Zombie film, right? It felt like earned. It felt really good. And it's just so many triumphs in this one little silly animated show that I think really speak to the larger superhero genre as a whole. This year reminded me, really, the thing I'm taking away from this year the most, Dom, I do like superhero storytelling. I just don't really like where it's going. But we've had so many little pockets of remembering, yeah, you did read comics. You do like this medium. It just... It's being so Marvel washed, as I call it, that like it's hard to see what else it can offer. Shows like this, you know, shows, well, you know, I don't want to spoil anything, but like movies like No Way Home, even though that is Marvel, but like being so strong and so rooted in like Raimi's amazing superhero trilogy of Spider-Man that helped kind of like bring the superhero movies to our forefront. Like Snyder Cut, like this year reminded me like, yeah, this medium could be badass. And Invincible's right up there with those titans that I think are like finally helping to raise the question of, should we just blindly consume everything Marvel? Because I think it's a conversation we need to have. So yeah, this show, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. And one thing I will say is I'm putting my foot down now. I don't care who needs to hear this. Stop associating, and Chris, like I said, this is not directed at you, but stop associating animation with silly. Like, silly stories are some of the best stories, and animation is just, as this year proved, animation is some of the best stories, just in general. So, people, let's take the mantra off. Let's first say that animation is not a genre, it is a medium. Let's take off the mantra that it is for kids, because I've got a couple entries coming up. I feel like all the entries that animated entries of this year have proved that, like, again, animation is just so far surpassed the just for kids mantra that Disney kind of stuck on it for so many years. You know, I think we're finally getting past that. So, speaking of which, my last Apple TV entry on this list, again, Apple TV had 3 entries on both of our lists this year. That is wild, to say the least. And none of them were the morning show, which I will get to in a little bit. My number 4 is the little show that could. The first season rocked the world during the pandemic. I was not the biggest fan of it, and then this season completely won me over. I am officially on the Ted Lasso bandwagon right now. This show is really, really something special. This show, again, it's another one of those things where it tricks you into thinking that it's a comedy, and then you watch it, and you're like, besides being like one of the most heartwarming and adorable shows ever, the fact that it like actually disguised itself first as a sports drama and then mostly as a character drama. Like, I'm going to do a little bit of a plug here for Serialize, the new app that is basically the letterbox for TV. Again, I'm going to talk about this literally every single episode because this is, again, not sponsored, but again, because it is just that good. I wrote in my review for Ted Lasso, the best kind of feel-good TV. Major props to Bill Lawrence for taking the goofy, off-kilter nature of Scrubs and bringing it into a much more genuine feeling and surprisingly deep character drama that disguises itself as a comedy/sports drama. I was off-put by how deep the show goes in the first season, but each character is so well fleshed out, they earn their moments. It's one of the first comedic shows where the humorous and goofy moments actually feel earned, and the second season doubled down on that by really diving deep into these characters' psyches. And for this show to, like, again, take everything that was, because the show ultimately was a feel-good show with its first season, and for this show to actually take its characters and take them into, like, more deeper, darker, more insecure places, you know, doubling down on, you know, on Ted, breaking down, like, kind of Ted's, like, consistently, like, happy and positive mantra, you know, diving into Roy and how he was feeling as, like, kind of more of a legacy figure coming back to the team. We even had some incredible solo episodes that were additional mandated episodes because of how popular the show was. Even bringing back Jamie and how they were able to redeem him. Nate's villain arc that really not a lot of people saw coming. Again, they just doubled down on each and every single one of these characters. They remind us of what we loved about them, and then they introduced new elements to them. And it was a sophomore season. Again, like For All Mankind, it was a sophomore season that I did not see coming with how good it was. I watched it week to week as opposed to binging it all at once, and it really, really had that impact on me. Like, I was laughing with the show. I was crying with the show. I was there for the show. I was cheering hard for them whenever they got their wins. It's the ultimate underdog show. It's incredible. Ted Lasso, I'm fully in love with it. Great, amazing show.
Hell yeah, man. I love to hear that. So, guys, we're about to start our top 3. Let us know your top 10 or top 3 movies, or TV shows of 2021 in the comments below. One last time, subscribe, hit that like button, and let's get into the top 3. For me, is a show that at least when I look up the ratings, I know people are enjoying it. It's being rated very highly. It's one of those little Netflix shows that could, or at least tried to, and it's just a true creative expression. Feel Good by Mae Martin, who's a Canadian comedian who quite literally, it's like a biopic, honestly, and she's even said it herself, write what you know. It's just an amazing, heartwarming love story about overcoming addiction, fighting for your dreams, not letting societal norms curb you or curtail your passion. And at the end of the day, it's not perfect. I don't want to spoil this. You guys need to go and watch this. The journey's not perfect, and the show is perfect. Her journey, Mae Martin's character's journey, is not perfect, but I think that's the beauty of it. And it's just, a lot of people try and do this. Let's make something so real, so true to life, but it never comes off as genuine. It never comes off as effective. This is a perfect example of how you do that. Every scene in this movie feels like you're sort of overseeing someone as you sip your coffee in a coffee shop, watching someone's conversation. You almost feel like, should I be watching this right now? Like, this seems personal. I'm snooping. I'm prying, you know, like I need to let me move over. Like, I need to give these people their privacy, their space. And that's like the beauty of it, really. So well acted. These are all actors you haven't heard of yet. An amazing cast of Brits and Canadian actors who come together to just absolutely crush it. Every performance is phenomenal. Every character gets an arc that pays it off. And the only character who's really in there that's of namesake is Lisa Kudrow, obviously Phoebe from Friends, but they don't just use her to sell the show. I mean, in fact, a lot of people don't know she's in the show. She's just a cast member. And that's all she is. And I think that's the best thing about it, is that her celebrity never gets in the way of her role, because it just perfectly allows these young actors who the show's clearly about to thrive. I can't wait to see what Mae Martin does next. Netflix greenlit another one of her original series. It seems like she has a home there. She only ever had 2 seasons written, so we don't have to worry about Netflix canceling this one too soon. It comes to a conclusion, which is another thing you can't really say about a Netflix show, that you feel the conclusion, the finality of it. But I mean, this show is like a masterclass in acting. It's a masterclass in mise-en-scène. It's a masterclass in like heartfelt, warm storytelling. Like this is just an amazing show. I'll be talking about this show forever. I think it's one of my favorite shows of all time, honestly, at this point. I watched this show 5 times this year. It's quick, first of all.
That's crazy.
It's quick.
That's crazy.
It's become my comfort. Look, once they took The Office off of Netflix, I needed a new comfort food. You know, Netflix is just the most accessible streaming service, and this has become that. It never lost it for me. So yeah, feel good. Go watch it, guys. It's phenomenal.
Got it. Chris, before we move into my number 3, I just wanted to pull up a comment. This guy, Myth Reindeer, is like, he's asking, are you John Bender from The Breakfast Club with your gloves? I think he admires your gloves.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate that. Myth Reindeer, whoever you are.
Myth Reindeer.
I know.
That's great. That's hilarious.
I know Myth Reindeer, and here's all I'll say, okay? I have to wear the gloves because I go hard in the paint. All right, man. Like when you work as hard as me, your hands get tired. Okay. Yeah, you just sit around and watch your Bengals win games, but they're gonna lose. Joe Mixon's gonna roll an ankle, and I cannot wait to see the look on your face when all you love.
Fantasy football guys.
He's just he's a friend. No, I'm just kidding. Myth's a good guy. I appreciate him tuning in. One of my guys who antagonizes me. That's Myth. So.
I figured. Got it. All right. I figured. I'm like, we don't get too many hater comments. I feel like if somebody's in there with the chat, they're gonna know you. Yeah. Jumping into my top 3. This was tough. Ultimately, again, there were a lot of really, really great shows this year, but I think that I was pretty confident with my choice. My number 3 is Mayor of Easttown. This is a show that took me a little bit of time to watch. This kind of took over like in the space like right after Invincible, like right in that like that sweet spot period between like the transition between the spring and the summer. 7 episodes, nice, tight, succinct, and man, this show floored me to the fucking ground when I watched it. This thing was just so emotionally gut-wrenching from start to finish. And the fact that it was like a mystery procedural, but not in like kind of like a faux soap opera-y way, like Big Little Lies was. This show was down in the dirt. This show was gritty. And for this show to be as sad as it was, and ultimately and tragic it was, like every single actor did such a great job of demonstrating just how miserable it must be for all these people and all the different tragedies of like that kind of like come with like living in an area like this in like some backwoods town in Pennsylvania. And they just crush it. They got a phenomenal group of actors. The mystery is actually really fucking compelling and really interesting. It doesn't just jerk you around. Like they actually like every choice that they make within the show actually feels like it was intended. The show, I think, has a really interesting take on people kind of feeling stuck in a position in their lives and kind of just having to deal with it. And it's all anchored by Kate Winslet in what might possibly be her best performance ever, which is kind of insane considering the fact that she's given us some of the best performances like ever. Again, she was one half of the duo that gave us one of the first biggest movies of all time with Titanic, and she really just does, like, again, I've talked a lot about how a lot of great acting comes from the eyes, and if you just look into her eyes and you just see the amount of pain and torture and torment that this character is carrying with her every single second as she continues to put forward the case, it has a little bit of like procedural and cop tropes in there, but they're not distracting ever. Like, again, every single one of these, I feel like I'm a broken record here, but I feel like it still stands. Every single character fleshed out, every single decision they make feels like it's there to benefit the story and nothing else. It has an absolutely impeccable ending that will, like, if you're a human being and you have feelings, this thing will absolutely floor you. It is easily, I feel like when people are going to talk about like the best in TV from this year, and the reason why I go with this one is because it is a live action debut. It's a mini series, but it could have easily been a movie. Props to Brad Inglesby and And Craig, I can't remember the name of the director who did it, but 7 episodes of absolute perfection, floored me. My number 3, Mayor of Easttown.
Yeah, if this was the top 11, that would be my 11th, for sure. It was tough not to be able to include that one. Well said, Dom. With that being said, guys, the top 2. This was a hard one for me because both of these shows I thought were firing on all cylinders in their second seasons. At the end of the day, number 1 got number 1 for a reason, but goddamn was it tough to not make this show be number 2. This might be, this is one of my new favorite shows of all time.
Wow!
Yeah, Ted Lasso.
This is surprising.
Season 2 is number 2. Unfortunately got beat out by number 1. Don't worry, Apple TV Plus, you got the title. But Ted Lasso, only number 2. Measly number 2. Runner-up. No, this is one of my favorite shows of all time. From the second I watched this thing, I knew it was special. It is phenomenal. Sudeikis is hilarious, as he normally is. I mean, I grew up on movies like Hall Pass and movies like Horrible Bosses, and I've realized that was before the days where I would be able to recognize actors and directors and things like that. Sudeikis was always my favorite parts of those films. I mean, he is awesome. Comedically, we always knew he was great. What I love about this is his dramatic chops. What I love further about this is how much of a contributor he is to the writing, to the production side of things. I mean, he's proving that, hey, yeah, I'm actually a filmmaker. I got into the business on screen, but I can do more than that, and let me prove it. The Lasso way, in my opinion, is the only way, man, because this show is sweeping the nation.
The Lasso way.
It's becoming a phenomenon. It's an instant hit. I mean, it's... What more can I say? Like, the dramedy, I think, is the new medium of television that seems to be taking off right now, and this show isn't the first to do it, but I think it's certainly perfecting it. Because I think for a long time, and I think the reason why we're in this television renaissance is because of shows like Ted Lasso. While my number 1 pick is very traditional, and while a show like For All Mankind is a very traditional style drama, and I think we still need those, and I think that they still have their place, the reason I think that this medium is sort of back to the prestige that it once had, and if anything stronger than it ever was, is because of like shows like Ted Lasso, shows like Feel Good, that understand that like stories don't necessarily have one emotion sometimes, whereas TV traditionally, if it's a sitcom, they had one emotion the whole time. Funny, 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 funny. That's not really people, though. If you're doing a show with people are messy, they're complicated. And so while the show's funny, it's also sad, it's also aggressive at times, it's also action-packed at times. You know, life takes you up and down, and I think shows like this are such a great feel-good. Ted Lasso, you know, Hacks, like Physical. It's like life's complicated, life's messy. I think that's a reason. People, I think, appreciate that. And I think it's still escapism, though, because at the end of the day, the concept is ridiculous. You know, it's a United States-born college Divisional II football coach who gets a job to escape a bad marriage to fly overseas to coach a professional English football club. Different type of football, and yet you can have such heartfelt and warm moments, such deep, intense conversations. Dude, come on. You know what I mean? Ted Lasso.
Yeah,
number
I
2.
do. Again, like I said, it completely won me over with its second season. I still flash back to the moment at the end of season 1 when Coach Beard is yelling at Ted, and he gives that really, really impassioned speech, and it's really awesome, and it's really earned. And then it ends with his ex, who's of course sitting in the same pub across the room, being like, "That was the sexiest thing I've ever seen." And he's like, "Taking it," and he's like, get your coat," and then he just moves the one chess piece, and he's like, "Checkmate, mate." Incredible show, absolutely. Yeah, my number 2 for me, and the reason why this is here, besides me being an animation fiend, is the fact that this show was probably the biggest surprise for me of the year, in the sense that a lot of, again, like, I'm not gonna lie, there's no shame in my game, dog. I work at Domino's. It's not the highest paying job, nor is it the most glamorous, glorious job, but there are a couple of my coworkers were recommending me this show because they knew I was super into movies and TV, and I'm like, it looks good, but I'm like, I don't necessarily know if I want to tune in. And then I just watched it, and the first episode was good, and then I kept watching. And by the time I was the third episode, I'm like, I'm hooked. I'm fucking hooked. My number 2 is Arcane, League of Legends. I'm not a League of Legends guy. I knew nothing about this lore or anything beforehand going in. And this show rocked me from start to finish. I think this was the only show this entire year that I watched more than once, like the entire time. And not just because it was an easy watch per se, because it was animated, because these episodes are 40 minutes each, and they are dense, they are detailed. The animation is gorgeous. The story, it will suck you in. It really teleports you into a different world. But again, like I've said since we started this list, the things that sucker me into these things are not the show, or not the worlds. The worlds help, but it's the characters and what they're able to do with these characters, how they're able to like kind of transform them over the course of these 9 episodes that they put out, are ultimately, I would say, giving us one of the best villain origin stories that I think we've ever gotten in Jinx, kind of how they're setting that up. Again, it created for me something that I feel like I've been missing since The Dark Knight, which is that really interesting protagonist-antagonist struggle that The Dark Knight did so well, which I think is so the reason why it is so goddamn compelling. I love how they develop each and every one of these characters, how they flesh out the world through the mix of magic and science, how they flesh out the class struggle. Like you said, Chris, again, there are tropes, there are types here, absolutely, but the way that it's done in such a way that feels so fresh and so new and so original. And that's what we talk about when we say tropes. Tropes should not be a negative term per se. It's just because of how lazy most of the storytelling has been in such recent years with the movies that people actually watch is what makes the tropes, you know, not fun to watch and lazy and repetitive and annoying. But this is the type of story and this is the type of show that does them right. I would heavily recommend this to anybody who's an animation fiend, to anybody who's into like the cult stuff. If you're a League of Legends guy, sure, I guess, but again, like this really, I don't think pulls a whole lot from League of Legends other than just the name, really. Again, Riot Games, they had been hinting at this show for years. They put it out. They fucking nailed every minute of it. Again, and props to Netflix for actually changing up their release strategy once and not dumping this all at once, because I think that them releasing this in the batches of 3 over the course of 3 weeks really helped to help have this, allowed the show to have the moment that it did. Again, it's so good that Imagine Dragons like kind of like put out like a new debut single. I know it wasn't technically a debut, but it just made for one of the best themes intros of the year that I watch with every single time. It's my number 2, if not for my number 1 being the best show in the air right now, it would be my number 1, Arcane League of Legends. It made Watch Mojo's best debut show of the year, so hey, that should tell you something.
That's cool. Hey man, I love Imagine Dragons. I do not understand the hate they get. It's
Me neither. It's the same thing I do with Nickelback. I'm like, what, okay, so what? They're popular, so now they're cool to hate. Okay, whatever.
What did both of those bands do? Pioneer a sound? Oh, so you don't like them because they were creative. And when I speak of like tropes and stuff, I hope you guys don't think that I'm against tropes. I'm writing something right now that is rooted in tropes. They're important. They're unavoidable. I just hate how lazy they have gotten, specifically in the Disney-ification of entertainment. And if you want to even pinpoint it further, Marvel. I think you guys know that, but I just want to speak to it. There's a reason that Arcane didn't make my list. It's not because of the tropes. It's just because, personally, other things spoke to me more. The tropes were phenomenal. They did a great job on that show. It certainly would be an honorable mention of mine. So I think Dom hits the nail on the head. You need tropes. They are there for a reason.
Yes.
And I think that's a good segue into my next entry, my number 1 TV show of the year.
You doing any honorable mentions or no?
Yeah, I have a few, but I'll make them quick.
Okay.
Basically, you know, I was talking with Ted Lasso. I think the reason we're in this renaissance of television is because of the way that we're able to sort of fuse genres now, the way that TV is progressing the medium forward in a way that I personally don't think we've had before. This like sort of realism, this the dramedy, you know, the challenging genre, the sort of bringing to light the old way of storytelling with the way that TV and film is progressing. But this show is pretty traditional. My number 1 show is For All Mankind, and I think it's important to remember where we came from, no pun intended, as we, you know, set out and tread new ground and explore new territory. I think the reason we have the success of shows like Ted Lasso, Feel Good, you know, Hacks, these sort of shows that are really slice of life with a little bit of everything into them is because for so long the medium of TV was propelled forth and carried by these traditional style dramas. And what For All Mankind does is I think it shows that those shows still have a place, which is awesome. Because I mean, when I praise the new guard, you know, it's not me saying I don't appreciate the old guard at all. I do. I really do, you know. Like Breaking Bad and Lost and all those types of shows. Like we need those types of shows. We need that traditional style of TV that for so long carried us through some very dark days TV's had, some very boring days, you know? We need that stuff. But so don't think I'm not saying that. And For All Mankind is the best reminder of like never forget where you came from, you know? Like it's so seeped in just everything that like you look back on TV and you wonder like, how did this type of TV storytelling fail? You know, because it's still really good. It's still functioning at a high level. I mean, on top of the fact that, like you said, It must be nice to sell AirPods because goddamn does this show look expensive, but in a way that doesn't take away from it. Like, it just adds to the immersion. If you're doing a show that's like asking this high of questions, we're literally traversing outer space, competing in a space race. We're going to Mars. Freaking Mars is next. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it needs to look good, but it also needs to feel at its core. The space is the dressing, you know, on the salad. The lettuce is like the drama, the character interactions. Like that's really what we're here for. And a lot of actors who I personally hadn't heard of prior to this show, but like you said, you know, you have Gordon and Tracy, even Deacon in the first season, and his death carries over into season 2, and even in his death, his character is still being impactful and creating a resonance because they built such a strong world. And skipping 10 years is something I normally hate. I normally hate it. It feels so unwarranted. It feels like, really, you had no ideas, so you had to just pretty much soft reboot? Nah, not in this show. This show is incredible in everything that it does, and the way that it kind of breaks my traditional feelings about how other shows in the past have done certain things, time skips and all that. Also, it's introducing a new guard, a younger generation, but they're having stakes in what's happening in the older generation. I mean, it's just like, this show is kind of like a masterclass on like scope, scale, characterization, sort of pacing, managing character relationships, making sure that everyone's thread is rightfully so carried into the next time skip, because I think the pattern is emerged now, especially considering the Nirvana cue at the end of the final season.
Yeah, right.
That's another 10 years. We're out of the 80s. We're into the 90s. You got to watch the show if you love film. That's really it. And it's a reminder of never forget where you came from, but also challenge those norms, and don't just be comfortable in being a carbon copy of where you came from. Take what you love from the past, the era of TV that has clearly inspired the show, and challenge it to do more, and I think we're doing that. So yeah, Apple TV Pluses, For All Mankind. People buy AirPods. I want a 5th and 6th season.
Yep. Yeah, for real. Yeah. And that's the thing, again, because you talk to these creators. I mean, like, these guys have clearly shown they have like a 5 to 6 season actually etched out plan for the show, which is something we talk about all the time with TV that usually never comes to pass. And again, it shows because the guy who made this is the same guy who did the 04 Battlestar Galactica, Ronald D. Moore. So this guy absolutely knows what he's doing. Yeah, this guy absolutely knows what he's doing with TV. I'm just going to read off a couple of honorable mentions that I have before we get out of here because we're running low on time. So just a couple shows that I want to give a shout out. Again, Disney didn't do us completely dirty in 2021. We still did get Loki from them, and Loki was a lot of fun. Actually really interesting. Actually felt like it was the first show that actually felt like it was pushing the MCU forward in a new direction. Reservation Dogs, which is a really cutesy, fun, funny, like kind of really off-kilter, almost you could call it like a stoner coming-of-age movie, but it's got those really interesting and like juicy little character moments that you wouldn't expect about a group of Native American kids living on some off-beaten reservation in Oklahoma who desperately want to get to California and to kind of follow their resident misadventures. We also got the wrap-up of the Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy that we covered back in 2020 with the 3rd and final installment, Kingdom, where you actually saw the Autobots and the Decepticons meet up with the Maximals and the Predacons. That alone had it as an entry on this list for a long time until I saw some of these other shows. We also have, which I still have not completed yet, season 2 of The Witcher, which I think is a vast improvement over the first season. Now that we've got our characters all together, now that we've kind of finished with the setup, we can actually take them into these interesting new directions that the show has talked about. It's still not quite there yet for me, but I can tell it's reaching the point where it's gonna become awesome. Then we have the new, most talked about, must-watch show, and it came from Showtime of all places, Yellow Jackets, which is essentially trying to fill the void that Lost did. First season ended on a little bit of a problematic note for me, but I still think that it is incredibly watchable, incredible performances all around. I think the mystery and kind of the nature of what the fuck is going on will continue to suck you in more and more and more. Chris, I'm going to be especially interested to see your thoughts on this show once you finish the first season and see where that goes. They're basically just trying to conjoin pretty much the entire first 3 seasons of Lost into one season once you actually see what is it that they're going for. And I don't mean that in a kitschy way. And of course, you wrap it up again. This show was so close to being on there. Again, count it off for me, Chris. Two seasons of this show in 1 year. Cobra Kai bookended the year, started the year, and ended the year, and arguably the 2 greatest seasons after what I thought was going to be like a little bit of a downward spiral after season 2, but we got that rumble at the end of season 2, and these 2 Netflix seasons, Netflix is where the show belongs, because this show just completely understands what it is now. It just ups the ridiculousness to all new levels. It is absolutely insane. But needless to say, I mean, none of those are the best show on TV. None of those are the most watched, most critically acclaimed, most beloved darling show on TV. The show that has finally hit the perfect synergy between drama and comedy, between great characters, great cinematography, incredible performances, knowing just the right amount of improv to give so that it doesn't feel forced. And the show that we were ultimately robbed of in 2020, that was the most anticipated thing going into 2021 that we got back. Only 9 episodes instead of 10, and that is, of course, Succession. Oh, my God. I binged the first 2 seasons of this show while I was in quarantine, while I was in lockdown, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this show absolutely earned all its accolades. Then season 2 won all those Emmys back in fall of 2020, and so I was foaming at the mouth. I'm like, okay, I'm keeping track of every single update they put out for the show. Where are they filming? When are they filming? What kind of updates? What kind of like hints are the cast dropping out, you know? And that was all going into the first episode once we finally got the release date. I was eagerly anticipating. I hit up Dustin the Duster Mason, who you guys know we recap all 9 episodes of this past season on this network right here, because this is both of our like current favorite shows, and we recap every single episode. And then it's already enough for the show to be the best show on the air right now, and I'm not saying that hyperbolically or in anything. This show literally is doing everything that TV should be doing right now. Again, from an acting standpoint, from a craft standpoint, from a comedy standpoint, from a drama standpoint. Again, this show has some of the funniest moments on TV and some of the most twisting the knife, like gut-wrenching dramatic moments in here. And this season, I will say, taking the COVID out of it already. I feel like this is the season that definitely held the characters mostly to their task. This is when we were finally solidified on who these characters are, where they're going, what it is exactly, kind of the new direction that we're going to have to go in as far as, you know, the battling out for the metaphorical throne in the form of the Waystar CEO position. Again, Jeremy Strong continues to top himself every single season. I don't know how that's possible. Kieran Culkin, I would say, gave the best performance of this season. Matthew McFadden gave the best performance. Brian Cox, again, solidified why he is the man on this show. Ultimately, they even took Shiv in new and different directions. Again, I already talked about this show for 9 weeks in our recap show. It's the best season. It's the best show on the air right now. Again, I think this is also the only 3rd season that I have on this entire thing. I cannot wait to see where this show goes and wraps up in its last 2 seasons that it has confirmed. This, I would say, ultimately has the finale of the year, and that it just took all of our expectations and directions where it was going and just completely threw it for a loop as far as direction. I actually watched it with a couple of my friends up here, that finale, and all of our jaws were respectively on the ground. Like, here is our mounts. Right there is where our jaws were, all the way on the floor for that finale. It is absolute gangbusters. If you're not watching this show, I mean, come on, what are you doing? It's Succession. It's the best show on the air. It's my number 1 of the year.
Awesome. And before we wrap out, guys, I'm just going to hit you with a quick few honorable mentions. I only have 5. Number 1, Arcane. Great show. Go watch it. We've said enough on it. Mayor of Easttown, a style of show I normally hate, but yet I fell for. Amazing. Kate Winslet, phenomenal. She crushed it. Kim's Convenience, a show that unfortunately would have made my number 10 had the 6th season been greenlit. But because of the fact that the creators were given one of the worst situations in all of Hollywood, being canceled before they can complete their journey, I loved what they were able to do.
And they're not even in Hollywood is the funniest part.
Yeah, true. It just shows that the problems seep out, right? It's just, I love what they did with what they were given, the time they had. It was an amazing last scene, Appa and Oma sort of walking away as the lights turn off on the store for the final time, but it wasn't meant to be the last scene, and it felt like the setup to a great 6th season, which we'll never get, but still go watch that show. It is phenomenal. I'm still wishing it a sad farewell. And Marvel's Loki. It was fun. It was cool. I enjoyed it. So, yeah, with that being said, guys, that's it. That's our show. I hope you enjoyed our top 10 TV shows of 2021. Always fun, the January slate.
Finally wrapping it up. Always fun. Yeah, I look forward to these top 10 lists every single year. I'm hoping that next year can be a little bit better on the film front, but hey, I still think we're going to have some interesting movies to talk about next week for our final podcast episode of January. We're wrapping up 2021 before we finally get into 2022 in February with our top 10 best movies of 2021. That's next week. Make sure you guys tune in for that. We had an absolute blast talking about each of these shows, reminding ourselves of what it is that we love about this medium, about this long-form storytelling medium within television. And for more content like that, you guys can click the subscribe button, click the like button, click the bell next to it. That way you guys get notified every time we put up new content. You guys are used to this by now. I'm done sounding like a broken record here. We've got so much more new content for you guys coming out this week. We got another episode of Talking Thrones on this coming Friday. We got another episode of Book of Boba this week. And stay tuned, because come February, we're bringing back the First Time Watch series, and we're going into some much magical terrain to give you guys. Chris, where could the good people follow you?
They can follow me anywhere that matters at Christian Evanko, Evanko spelled Evanko. I make music, which you can find on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Google Music, and every other streaming service. There's a bunch that also don't say music in their title where my music is available to be listened to, like SoundCloud. Please go check it out. Again, that's Christian Evanko, Evanko spelled Evanko. I'm also on all the social medias our podcast is on. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Go follow me there. Join the conversation. Thank you guys again for joining us today. And one last time, I want to ask you guys, please go follow my co-host, Dom. Where can they find you and keep up to date with you?
At Movie Nerd Reviews across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Serialized, which I talked about at the beginning. I'm going to drop a promo for that on every single possible episode because all you TV watchers out there that have been begging for a Letterboxd for TV, we finally have it. So go out there and check it out if you haven't. Not sponsored. Indeed. Follow me across all platforms there. And be sure to follow us on our social media platforms at Official Talkin' TV Podcast across Facebook and Instagram and Twitter coming soon. And as always, people, remember, you know the drill. 12 seasons in a short film and watch more fucking movies. See you guys next week for movies.